Hey guys, today I want to talk about some toxic trends you can find online. Obviously, as you guys know, you can find so much information online these days on TikTok, on YouTube, everywhere, and everybody can be a content creator today. And although there are, of course, great content creators, we are not going to be talking about them today. We're going to be talking about content creators that give you bad advice, that generalize about things, that talk about things from their own experiences only and their own traumas. And, we're going to be talking about some bad advice you can find online that is very common. That is something that you can see a lot. So, not just one person, but a lot of people will be, suggesting these things. The first one is going to be about feminine energy. So there's a lot of talk about feminine energy, and I'm not gonna get into it because you have that in the instructions that you get along with your spells. Also, I've talked about it loads on the channel. And of course, there's a lot of content creators that talk really well about feminine energy. There's some good content on it, definitely and for sure. However, there's a lot of content that is very misleading. So there is a bunch of content creators that claim that to be in your feminine energy, you need to find a provider. Feminine energy means that you don't work, that you don't do anything except get your nails done and I don't know, other stuff, lashes, whatever girls get done. And somebody else is going to be providing for it, and that's going to be your life. Now, that is not just something that is untrue about feminine energy and what it means to be in feminine energy. It absolutely has nothing to do with that. But like I said, we're not gonna get into it because we already know what it means, right? But that is extremely bad advice. That is extremely bad advice because back in the day, not that long ago, women were not allowed to work, they were not allowed to vote, they were not allowed to have bank accounts, and they were dependent on their husbands. And women have fought to be able to work, to be able to provide for themselves, and to be able to be independent. And some people nowadays just want to set us back into the past, basically. So, again, there are different circumstances and obviously different desires. And if somebody wants to be stay-at-home mom, that is great. I'm not talking about that. We are not talking about women that stay home with their kids. We are absolutely not talking about those type of situations. We are talking about encouraging young women to find providers and to not have a career, not to have a goal in life, not to work, not to have any kind of safety, really. So, what can happen is that that provider can leave at any moment. That provider, something can happen to him, so he can't provide anymore. Uh, that provider might be abusive. A lot of things can go wrong here, obviously, and having your own just having your own I'm not even going to say having your own job because it doesn't have to be a job, but having your own, not necessarily even an income, but interest in life that is beyond nails and lashes is very important. You don't want to go through life unconscious. You don't want to go through life without developing some skills. And it's bad advice. Not only it's not what feminine energy is about at all, because feminine energy is about feeling safe and secure, and to do that you shouldn't be depending on anybody financially. And I'm not saying that receiving gifts if that's something you want, or just like getting pampered by your person is a bad thing. Not at all. That's not what this is about. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that the advice to just go through life as somebody who depends on somebody else for money, and that just doesn't have any purpose or goal except to be codependent, is not a smart choice. Again, no judgment, but a warning. A lot of things can go wrong here. And this is not a bad advice just because this is not what being in feminine energy means at all. It would actually be quite the opposite of that. But just because it does give girls bad advice for the future. So be mindful, be smart about it, think about it, and always have a backup plan, I guess, if you're gonna get um, dependent on somebody else's money fully, which I do not recommend. Okay, let's go into the second trend. The second trend is pop psychology. There's so much pop psychology out there. And the topic that I have picked is, I guess, the most common one, and that is narcissists. So, according to pop psychology that you can find on TikTok, on YouTube, everywhere you look, pretty much everybody is a narcissist. Everybody's ex is a narcissist, right? And it's a term that just gets, used for everyone, pretty much everyone. So, to actually diagnose a narcissist, you need to go to a psychiatrist, basically, and there are books that they learn from that are thicker than the Bible. Diagnosing somebody with narcissism because they cheated or they ghosted or they lied or they gaslighted about something, or of course, I'm not excusing this type of behavior. It's nasty behavior. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't get this confused. However, those things do not guarantee that somebody is a narcissist. Actually, in the majority of the cases, that person will not be a narcissist. Let's be honest. But, everybody will be reading the content about it, and, there will be, oh, they lie, they cheat, they gaslight, and they will be like, oh, that's my ex. So my ex is a narcissist. And now I'm the victim. I'm the victim of a narcissist. And then people go into all of those, content about victims and how to deal with post-narcissist breakups and all stuff like that. And, I'm not saying that they are in an easy situation, or I'm not excusing their exes in any way, but there is this idea that every single person almost that breaks up with somebody is a narcissist. That is absolutely not true. Actually, if you look at the statistics, of course, this is again based on documented cases. There is only 1% of narcissists in the world. And even if we use the undocumented ones, there would not be a huge number or a huge percentage. It would still be a small percentage. It is a disorder that is not very typical. And therefore, just because you read a little article online, or you saw TikTok, does not mean that you have dealt with a narcissist. Okay? So, so many people go down this spiral of, oh, I'm a victim of a narcissist, and then they just take all of that content in. It only makes their victim mentality stronger, and it's just not good. It is quite toxic, and honestly, not a fan. Then we have pop astrology. again, something that is very, very common. You will see pop astrology content all over the place. And basically, it will be exaggerating about positions, exaggerating about transits. And I'm not really going to get into it because it can be versatile, obviously, and always is. But astrology does not work like that, obviously, and it's a tool of self-discovery more than a tool of predicting things or anything like that. So keep that in mind. So much pop astrology out there, so much pop psychology out there. Be really careful with those types of topics. And then, of course, we cannot forget about the manifestation community. So I will just repeat this again because I think that some of the things that they are sharing massively, some of them, of course, again, we are not talking about every single content creator. There are, in every area that I've just mentioned, there are good ones and there are bad ones. Well, bad ones. The ones that probably want to be helpful but are sharing things from, maybe their own experiences. Anyways, manifestation. So many of those content creators claim that nobody has free will except yourself. And that is very toxic because everybody has free will. Everybody has free will. And it kind of, when you get the idea that you're the only person that has free will and your neighbor doesn't, and your boss doesn't, and your friends don't, and your parents don't, and your kids don't, and your partner doesn't, or your ex doesn't, whoever, it kind of puts you in this role where you think that you're controlling everything. And that's kind of their point. You are in control of everything. And this whole toxic idea basically comes from the human wish to control things. Because, yes, we would love to control everything, obviously, but we can't. And it's so hard to accept that for everyone that we keep on trying. So there is a whole movement claiming that you're the only person with free will that does control everybody else. But that is, of course, too good to be true. Sounds too good to be true. Usually it will be too good to be true. Let's be honest, that can't be the case, clearly. So just reminding you all that everybody does have free will. Everybody has free will, not just you. You do not control other people. You cannot control other people, and you shouldn't want to control other people anyways. So the only person you can control is yourself. The problem is not that you can't control others. The problem is that majority of the people don't control themselves because they're on autopilot. This is something we talk about all the time. They're on autopilot, which is basically their subconscious mind runs programs based on their experiences and expectations, and that controls their actions, reactions, and they're not really controlling their emotions. They're not controlling what's happening. This is why people get anxiety. This is why people get attached, because they're not in control even of themselves, yet alone their neighbors and everybody in the world. So think about it, guys, really. Another thing is affirmations. So you're gonna get a lot of content out there that you should be using affirmations to, get your ex back and things like that, like affirming for the other person that the other person is like has done things that you want them to do. So affirmations can be great, are great. Why? Because our brain learns through repetition. So basically we learn to walk because we were repeating the movement. We learn to talk because we were repeating words. When we were in school, we were repeating things until we remember them and learn them. So obviously that's how the brain works. And therefore affirmations can be great to reprogram certain limiting beliefs. But what I personally recommend is affirming for yourself. So, because the only person you can control is yourself. So, affirmations are for you, they're for your mindset, they're to reprogram your brain. Affirmations do not work on bringing somebody else back. There is no way that can work. Just think about it. Other person will not be controlled by the things you're saying about them in your head. It doesn't work like that. You can't control other people. It just doesn't work like that. And even with spells, we do not control other people. We can influence other people, but we can't influence other people with affirmations that we are repeating to ourselves. It's not something that they will know about it. They will not know about it. They will not hear it. It just doesn't work. So, having said that, be very mindful with the content you are, watching. Uh, I would say that a lot of these content creators you should perceive as entertainment. Maybe you like some of them, maybe you enjoy some of them, they can be entertaining. I have nothing against anyone again, but be mindful with what you actually take in. Okay, so to repeat myself, because this is how we learn, feminine energy does not mean finding a provider and doing nothing. Being in feminine energy has nothing to do with that. And that's a bad advice in general. Not everybody is a narcissist, and most likely your cheating ex is not a narcissist. Okay. Um, Planets do not determine your future. They are actually a tool of self discovery, and we can see some things obviously in transits, but it's not the way it's portrayed in a lot of online content. And then obviously, everybody has free will, and you do not control other people. Thank you for listening.